while he was vice president, he was in charge of relations with Guatemala. And he took more trips to Guatemala than any other vice president had. And we led a huge coup, America did, in Guatemala. It's where we get the Banana Republic term from,
True.
is
That's
from
right.
Guatemala. But the children there was something Jill was in charge of, women and children. I don't know exactly what the thing was, but they were getting billions of dollars for virtually no real agenda, with starting with Joe Biden being vice president. And there's also DuPont chemical companies down there, which is interesting
Huh.
as well, that make
Interesting.
cyanide, of all
Interesting.
things.
Wow.
Yes. There's a major cyanide. It's what I think their largest cyanide factory is made in Guatemala for DuPont
What?
chemicals. But there's something there with, if 70% of the missing children in this country that have been led here by Biden's actions, and 70% of them are Guatemalan. And Jill just so happens to be on the board of the company whose headquarters are in Guatemala for this Save the Children. And their headquarters got raided recently, just less than a few weeks ago.
Wow.
And this is not the first time this year. I think it's the second time this year they've done a raid on them, because it's different offices, but they're looking for, they found something, obviously, they wouldn't keep looking. Um, there's just something there, something terribly there about the possible DuPont. Was he killed? I don't know. Glioblastomas, I'm sure they're absolutely real and natural occurrences. But I think that if somebody doesn't look into this, and why it's not even mentioned, any of this,
Right.
to me is the biggest red flag. But I'm concerned now with the Guatemala children. The Bidens have had their hooks in there since 2008. So and now the kids are coming over, and there's a program called the minor migrant minor relocation, I think, program is what it is under Joe Biden, which is
Mm.
something he fostered while he was teaching at the Penn Biden Center right before becoming president.
Hmm.
And they had laid all this out. The plan, the immigration is not something that they didn't plan for. That is something they absolutely planned for before he ever became president. And this is laid out in white papers from his office at Penn, and pages and pages and pages of how we need to get more migrant children into the country. What is this obsession with getting these migrant children? We have a decently young population. We're not struggling on the age front. We're not, the boomers, we thought it would be kind of worse than it is, the amount of boomers, but they've had a gradual, lifespan. It's not necessarily they're all one age. They've had different ways of dying. A lot of people have come and gone, and we have a good migration policy. So it's like, why do we need to do this? Why are none of them coming with parents? And it goes so against what Beau stood for. And the Beau Biden Foundation, which exists now, this is the weirdest thing. The Beau Biden Foundation makes well over $3 million a year, um,
Hmm.
with outreach to children. And it was all based off of the Child Protection Task Force that Beau had done,
Right.
which is a major landmark for Delaware, which is in the country. Other states took it up after Beau had done it. I think Wisconsin was one of them. So it changed the politics for multi states. And Joe Biden's president here mentions nothing about this. Mentions nothing about it with these horrible allegations against Hunter, which ended up all to be true. What was on his laptop? And if you had a chance to redeem anything in your family, wouldn't you have tossed out the bow bone for a second
You
with
think?
but it didn't happen. And there's something that tells me that this is not the end of this story by any means.
I agree.
And for Beau, I think, if he was at all a decent person, I know plenty of what it's like to have like family problems. I think everybody knows what it's like to have family problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate, if he was the good one, to let his legacy be just another one of the Bidens. I don't think that's fair if he did half of what I've read that he's done.
Yeah.
I mean, he talked to 25,000 school children in Delaware, teaching hundreds of teachers and coaches how to see the signs amongst their peers
Mm-hmm.
and how to report it safely. He did like ID kits for kids so that if they went missing, they could be found. And like they did a lot of things that were just, he really tried. And so uh, I'm not trying to clear his name, but I'm just wanting to clear up this story. And if it just so happens that he is the golden child, so to speak, I think it's well within our honor as people to make sure that he gets that credit fully. because you shouldn't be marred by that kind of family. That's really unfortunate that they suck, you know.
Yeah.
But you tried, I mean, at least if anything, he tried the worst pedophile in our country's history. I mean, and that was stated by ABC News, NBC News. They all said this. He was the
Oh yeah.
worst
You
pedophile
can look it up.
for the breadth of what he did.
It's
Yeah.
everywhere. And
And
you said, okay, so I knew nothing about the Guatemala stuff with the
mhm,
Bidens. Are you familiar with the history of America doing human experimentation on Guatemala?
very much so. Very much so.
I'm just like,
Yes.
what is up with us in Guatemala? Because for those who don't know, we were giving them syphilis, right? We gave basically like prostitutes down there syphilis and had them run through the community to
I think
kind
it
of
was
do like
Johns
our own.
Hopkins, wasn't that? John Hopkins?
It might have been. I
Didn't-
forget who
I think
exactly it was. I
so.
remember Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, apologizing publicly for our human experimentation in Guatemala, and it was around the same time our government was doing the Tuskegee experiments as well. Very
Mhm.
similar evil situations.
Well, we had a lot of, I don't know necessarily understand the investment that we had with Guatemala. Yeah, we got our bananas from there. We got some things from there,
Right.
you know, mainly produce and other foods, but there's no real understanding as to why we seem to have picked on them. It's kind of like, why did we pick on Haiti? You know, like we kind
Exactly.
of we've exploited certain people without great explanation. Like Ukraine, I can understand the exploitation value of Ukraine.
Mm.
It was like the sex trafficking center of Europe for, well, it still is
Yeah.
considered that. You know, they just don't tell you that anymore, but that was well known
Mm-hmm.
for a long time
Mm-hmm.
that it's oligarchy money. There's a high sex trade population with the women there and the men and children, and that's always been the way, you know. So like I could see the money laundering reasons there, but there wasn't really a good system to launder money really in Guatemala.
Right.
They had high resources, which I imagine has to do with it, but we were experimenting. And we also have if you look it up, there's a documentary that came out probably 14 years ago, called The Missing Children of Guatemala,
Okay.
where during the 80s and 90s, they found out because of a woman in Belgium who was from Guatemala and was adopted, wanting to find out, you know, about her mother, found out her mother was still alive. The mother was told her baby died during the pregnancy,
Whoa.
during the birth. And
Oh.
this happened to tens of thousands of Guatemalan children between the 80s
What?
and 90s that were then sold to the United States.
Wow.
30,000 of them were sold to the United States in those years. And a lot of them were like fake adoptions. They weren't actually adopted kids. They were stolen from their parents and then sold out of these, like, you know, essentially orphanages that were for infants that they had stolen. And so there's now a large effort of people trying to figure out these trafficking rings that were obviously operating back then, which they managed to find some of the key players, and all of them were wives or husbands or in government themselves, high up, like
Wow.
the minister, the president. Their family members were always the key leaders in these things. And so this history of us, it seems like the export we get from them the most is children,
Dang. That is
historically. Yeah.
insane. But lines up with what you were saying about this human trafficking ring that Biden's overseeing at the border, and Kamala, our borders are, that's only been growing exponentially since they got in office, and this is like truly horrific stuff. Well, Destiny, thank you so much for being on. You are
My pleasure.
extremely informative guest. I really, really am grateful for your time. Can you tell everybody where they can find you, and also where they can find your podcast that you're doing with that scientist
Oh
tonight?
yeah, that'll be going on tonight on X.
Cool.
My name on X is just Desi, Dezzie, downscore Rezi, Rezzie. I'm probably the only Desi you'll find on there, so you know, you'll see me. So I'm always on X. X is my go-to platform, now that it's much more better free speech, and it's absolutely where I do all my threads and all my research. I have a website as well, but it's linked on my Twitter. And we'll be doing an X space tonight. I think it's going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern time with Dr. Judith Berry Baker. We'll probably get some other names. I had a mind to invite Ian to come in as well because he hasn't got to listen to her yet, and
Oh yeah,
he needs to. So
yeah.
hopefully I can rope him into
You talk about
visiting as
Ian
well.
Carroll.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been on the show. I've done a few with him here. It was him commenting on your video. I think that wound
Hmm.
up in my algorithm. I'm like, oh, interesting. I had the same feeling he had, which is I knew none of this, but I'm
Yeah.
glad that we're talking about it, and it's important that we know these things, even when it comes from families that we really despise. It's good to know why are we not talking about these things and thinking about that. So everyone should go check out Destiny's stuff, find her on X, and look up her art as well. Where's the art?
Oh, it's ddresendezart.com. It's just my name, initials, and
Sweet.
resendezarts.com.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. Talk
No
soon.
problem.
Bye.
Thank you.
Man, oh man. People, you got to stay vigilant. The evil is in every echelon of society, low and high. So stay vigilant out there. And I think it's just extremely important that we have these conversations, even though, like I said, I really don't like the Biden family. But I think it's really interesting why we are not talking about this more. Why has this been memory hold? Why are lots of things memory hold? There's typically a reason why the negative space is there. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Unfortunately, there's no callers today because it was so last minute, but we will have them back next Sunday. And Wesley, thank you so much for being here. You're the man. And we will see you all next week. Have a good one.